What's up? I'm John Middlekauff, the host of the 3 and Out podcast, and you can find it below in the description. Also, you're watching this on the Volumes YouTube channel. I need you to subscribe right now. Share with your friends. It's my pleasure to bring on All-Pro. You know, I would say defensive tackle, but I'll say defensive lineman, several-time Pro Bowler. I don't think he doesn't know what losing is. He's only played for Ohio State and Pittsburgh his entire career. Cam Heyward, what's going on, bro?
What's up? Appreciate you having me. Thank you for the introduction as well.
No problem, man. How's summer going? What the hell you been up to?
Trying to do a podcast. We use the same producer, and James is always cracking down on me, giving me hell. And then just trying to take care of kids and try to get better at my craft. Those are the 3 things going on, and man, they take up a lot of my day.
How many kids do you have?
I got 3, 6, 4, and 2.
Damn.
My oldest is a boy.
You are a man on the move. Well, I saw you talking to McAfee about diet, and obviously, hell, I'm smaller than you, but I'm a couple years older than you. Once you hit a certain age, diet, is very, very impactful, right? And yes. The off season for a guy like you with working out, how do you balance working out and food and staying focused when basically you get 40 days off till the season starts?
Man, your diet is everything, especially right before the season and during the season. You really care about what's going in your body. I feel like my only time to really cheat on food is, right at the end of the off season where I'm just like, depressed and pissed off we didn't go further in the season. But, now it's just you care about what you eat and just got to take care of your body. I don't like to do these fad diets, but, man, you just try to continue to just put good things in your body, have good protein, and stay basically boring with your meals.
Well, it's one thing, like if you're just a single dude, in your 20s, eating healthy, you have kids. So I'm sure you got crap all over the place. You're always taking them by McDonald's or whatever. Like, how is that? I mean, it'd be a test on any man, bro.
Well, like I look back at like as a kid and I'm like I had plenty of McDonald's growing up. Like, and my wife does a great job. She won't even let them get McDonald's anymore. And I'm like,
oh, damn.
I have to have like meals prepared because if I get anywhere close to their food, I'm just going to dive right into the pantry and, go ham. But my wife's always like, why don't you just eat our food? I'm like, because that's a little bit more unhealthy. And I need to, watch what I eat before I blow up.
As an older guy, I mean, you're a veteran now in the league. Mm-hmm. Do you, for your training, especially lifting, because, I mean, you do your work in the trenches, do you lift as hard as you once did? Is it a lot different? Is it more just maintaining year round, or do you go heavy and then once the season hits, do you sustain? Like, how does that work as you've aged?
It's crazy. When I was younger, I used to always go to these fancy places and, have like everything catered to you where it was, this is what they specialized. I think in the last 4 years, I found a trainer who does an amazing job here. He used to train Paul Posluszny and Sean Lee.
Yeah.
And he's trained a lot of other guys, but everything's just what I need at the time. The great thing about me is I haven't been injured a lot, so I've been able to keep, pushing my limits, get stronger. But there are times I need to, scale back and determine what my body needs. And I've been able to, the Steelers have allowed me to just keep up that during the season with my trainer, and it's just benefited me. Obviously, I like to work out with, the guys in the facility, but my trainer has done a great job of, making sure I was able to continue to keep getting better. And if I'm hurt, we address that and make sure that it doesn't become an issue.
Once the season ends, you talk about a football guy. I mean, you come from a football family. Your dad played in the league. Your brother, I didn't even realize this, was just drafted by the Steelers. Michigan State. Connor, we'll get into that. That's pretty cool. Yes. When the season ends, you guys get, losing the first round of the playoffs. How much time do you just get away from football?
Oh, well, I wanted to get away right after that game, but I had the Pro Bowl
Yeah.
coming up. And so we went from Pro Bowl, and then I had some stuff to do at Super Bowl. Um, and surprisingly, right after that, I couldn't really disappear from working out. I feel like I got right back into it right after the season. Just trying to continue to craft and get better. Usually in the past, I've taken about a month off and just tried to disappear with the family for a little bit. But man, I feel like I haven't stopped, and hopefully that's a good thing.
What's funny is for the Steelers going into the draft, just because the talk of the drafting a quarterback really high, and at the time, I'm sure you, just like all of us, unless Tomlin and Colbert were giving you the good inside information, it was like Malik Willis, talking quarterback, and you guys end up taking a quarterback. And when the draft ends, I mean, a lot of people are talking about that. But for you personally, your brother gets drafted on the team. Like,
right.
I mean, how cool was that moment?
Oh, if I could go through that moment was insane because what was it, day 3? So the first 2 days, we knew he was going to get drafted in the first day. The second day is second and third. And we thought, okay, maybe third he might have a chance. And then I'm talking to my agent. He was like, day 3 is our sweet spot. Day 3, 4th to 5th round, and you just never know. And so he's getting calls from different teams, and he's like, I don't know if they're interested or they're interested in me being an undrafted rookie, and then they call and sign me. So he's going through that, and I can just watch him. He's like the competitor inside my brother. He was so ticked off that he's watching guys and he's like, I'm better than him, and I know I'm better than him. I'm like, you can't do that. You just got to focus. You got to understand that teams see other things differently. Wherever you end up, that's where you make your mark. And then he stormed off one time, and this time my mom's or my brothers are like, go check on him just to make sure he's okay. And then I go in the room, and the phone rings, and I don't know who it is. And I look at the screen, and it has the Bears up, and it says the pick's in. And I'm like, oh, he's going to the Bears. That's really cool. And then he gives me this sort of little smirk where it's like you don't need to know who's on the other end of this call. And I'm like, is it Chicago? He's like, no, it wasn't Chicago. And I'm like, but who was it? And I was like, and I asked him, who was it? And he just walks away and he says, hold on. And then he goes into the family room, and he has us all waiting, and I'm like, okay. And then I see, oh, Pittsburgh's next, and I'm like, he would have told me by then if he got drafted to my team. And then I had to watch it come across the clicker, and I'm like, this dude, he could have just literally told me. And then Mike T called me and told me, he's like, we got him. He was like, I didn't think he was going to be there in the 6th round, but we got him. And I was like, Mike T, I appreciate this, but I'm not going to let you down. This is my little brother. I'm going to make sure, he lives up to everything. And he was like, oh, I already knew he was going to do that. So, I'm drafting him because, of the player he is, not because he's your brother. And I'm like, okay. So it's been surreal. And my mom had already disappeared from that moment because she was already so nervous. So she was outside the house. And when she came back, we were all celebrating. She was like, where is he going? And we were like, he's coming to Pittsburgh. And she broke out in tears right there. So, we were very fortunate. It doesn't really end up that way most of the time, but it's crazy to think about.
Had they, whether it be an assistant coach, Coach Tomlin, Colbert, any of his people, had they brought him up to you leading up to the draft when you were just at the facility working out or any of that? Had they asked you questions or...
So they never brought him up specifically leading up to the draft. It was always they would watch, the scouts would watch, and I would watch individually during the season. And you see, did you watch Connor? And we would always exchange what we thought, what he was good at, what he was at. But they kept me out of the loop for a lot of it. And I was like, I like it that way because I don't want to have a say on anything. I know the scouts there do an amazing job. So They did right this time.
Yeah, I'd say you're part of a team that's pretty good at drafting. You know
Yeah.
what's funny is I was a graduate assistant at Fresno State. Would have
Mhm.
been probably when you were playing at Ohio State, and I don't know if he specifically did the West Coast, but Mean Joe Green would come. I think he scouted a lot of colleges, and he
Yeah.
came by both years. And I remember one year he lost his phone, and it was lost. And I just remember it was my job to find Mean Joe Green's phone, and I ended up finding it. And he shook my hand. I'm sure you got big hands. This guy has to have the biggest hands I've ever shook in my entire life.
Yes, yes. I remember when I got drafted and I went in and Mean Joe was there and he literally engulfed my hand and I was like, oh, I've never felt like this, like intimidated off the field before in my life. And so, meeting Mean Joe and knowing who Mean Joe is before then, he was one of my heroes. He's a hero in Pittsburgh, and getting to meet him for the first time in person, welcoming me to be a Steeler. I was excited, but man, when you see his hands, they're humongous. They take up like if they were on the screen, they take up the entire screen.
It's wild. Back to your brother for a second, because you guys, obviously there's a big gap in age, so it's not like, one was a sophomore, one was a senior, you would have played together. Even the Bosa brothers are somewhat closer in age. Had to be a little surreal. Just, I know you guys haven't, like the pads haven't come on, but just being in the same locker room as him, seeing him walk around and put on a Pittsburgh Steelers jersey. I mean, that's pretty crazy.
It's really weird because, like, he's been in our locker room multiple times just as a guest of mine. And, like, I've given him, like, Steeler crap before, but, like, now he has his own Steeler stuff. Like, he's able to go out to the field and not just stay on the sideline. And, I have to – there's certain times where I'm like, I cannot just be his brother. I have to be his teammate. And usually I talk a lot of crap to my teammates. I talk a lot more when you're my brother. And I make sure I make sure that, like, you got a lot to live up to, so you better not let me down or my dad down or our other brothers. So, he knows that, and he'll be better because of it.
It's funny. I'm in the Bay Area right now, and about probably 15 minutes away from me is Antioch, where Najee grew up and played high school football. And we'll get into college recruiting a little bit later, because you played for high school football in Georgia, but ended up at Ohio State, which I don't know if Georgia would let you out of the state nowadays. They'd Kirby be all over you. But same thing with Najee. When I was in college, Pete Carroll never would have let him get out of the state. He would have been at USC, but he ends up at Alabama. Comes to you guys. I was watching Tomlin talk with Ryan Clark on his podcast with those guys, and he talked about the Christmas tree story, how Najee, just didn't have anything, and he kind of went to you, obviously, as team leader, the captain, the guy that runs the show, and you got him a Christmas tree. But it was really one thing he talked about this offseason and just moving forward is your ability to kind of like teach him the ways to be the leader of the squad one day, because ultimately, obviously he's a fantastic player, but just in terms of a person, your interactions with him, what you thought about him when you first met him, and just kind of the time you've spent with him since, trying to give him the Pittsburgh Steeler way.
Yeah. I think Najee is one of the more ultimate football people, because he just loves football. Like, he wants to be great at it. You see the way he competes, and it's a gift and a curse. Like, he wants to be a part of everything, but Najee can't do everything. And, we've always been hard on Najee because he's hard on himself, because the sky's the limit. Like, I think one day he's going to be the top running back in this league. And, he can shoulder a team and offense. And we just have lofty goals for him. Like, when he first got here, everybody likes to talk about, his big legs, but man, the dude's a workhorse. Like, he comes to practice, wants to get better. And I think that comes from, like, the Alabama side. But he's also a big kid as well.
Yeah.
And so we got to talking, and you understand that, Najee's got some growing to do, but the way he goes about his business and just wants to get better, you're like, all right, you see where he could, potentially lead one day. And I think Najee only understands football because, that's his safe haven. And the point of me getting the Christmas tree was you got to be a human as well. You got to, you can't just think football, football, football and not, live because things will pass you by and you won't be able to enjoy, the fruits of your labor. I think for me, I just wanted to give them the Christmas tree to just let them open up, let them know that it's Christmas, enjoy the time with your family. And I didn't know if you ever had a Christmas tree before, so I wanted to make sure I did that. Going forward as a leader of this team, I feel like Najee's got to be the guy on offense. You know, they're going to be giving the rock a lot more and a lot more often. So he's got to be willing to not only let his play speak, but he's got to speak as well. Because you've had Ben Roethlisberger so long, this is a great opportunity for Najee Harris to be the catalyst for everybody on offense. There's so many moving parts, so many new positions we have, but Najee should be the staple. Najee should be the guy that, Coach TR refers to as the straw that stirs the drink. And Najee's got to be that way on offense.
One thing I think that's cool about you guys is you don't run from anything. Like Coach Tomlin just embraces whatever the facts are and the reality of things are. And watching him with Ryan Clark, he talked about, we know you guys are going to be good on defense. You have been for 45 years. That never changes. But offensively, there's a huge change going on. We'll dive into the quarterbacks and what you saw. But like the Steelers want to run the ball. Hell, it goes back to even before you got there. And Bruce Arians was the coordinator, and Roethlisberger was throwing it too much. They wanted to run it more. Le'Veon came in. So you've played. I thought Le'Veon had a couple-year stretch where he was as good as any player in the league. Yeah. We all saw it fantasy-wise, but and he was so unique. Najee's pretty unique, right? Just in terms of size, the ability to catch the ball. Just from a scouting report as someone who just watches offensive guys for a living and breaks them down, give me a scouting report on Najee Harris.
Then he can catch the ball in the backfield. He's a three-way back in that he can block, catch, and run. And he's a bigger back. He's like the Derrick Henrys of the world. But I think the thing that stands out the most in Najee is his short space movement. So many times this past year, they should have been tackles for loss, and he was able to get out of the way and get upfield. And so those are the things that really stick out. Obviously, he's got a mean, stiff arm. Loves to jump a little too much sometimes when he and hurdle people as he gets to the outside. But man, he is a heck of a talent. And there are not a lot of runbacks that can do that.
Let's actually bang out a couple more scattering reports, just because I think you got a pretty good idea. Let's just stay in your division. Let's start with a couple quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson.
Yes.
Scattering. Let's break him down.
He is electrifying.
Have you ever seen anything quite like him?
Man, I played against Vic at the end, but I never got to play against Vic like during when he was in Atlanta. But Lamar is special, and he plays with a big chip on his shoulder. He's able to stretch the field with his tight ends. He throws a really good ball down the seam to Mark Andrews. And if you let him go on the edge, you're doomed. I think the thing about it is you got to keep him bottled up, but man, it's not easy to keep him bottled up. And not a lot of teams had success. And I think he's added more weight, so he's going to be able to drop the shoulder onto you. So you got to be careful of that as well.
Joe Burrow.
Tough, man. Not a lot of help from the offensive line, and was able to go out there and get it out to those, all-world receivers. You got Jamar Chase, you got Boyd, you got Higgins. Those three guys make Joe Burrow's life easier, but man, Joe can get out of the pocket. I know versus us a couple times, he was able to extend plays and then find those receivers down the field. And if you give Joe Burrow time, he's going to dice you up.
Joe Mixon.
Joe Mixon, tough back. Struggled early in his career with fumbles, but really has settled down. Very sneaky because when you look at their success, everybody likes to make a big deal about their high-flying offense. But if he gets going and gets the chains moving, they like to put the ball in his hands in the third quarter and let him wear down a defense. They do a really good job of having pass to run tendencies and then just feeding them and letting them have a lot of success.
You know what's funny, as a player, obviously you get to know your division so well, and I'm sure you could give scouting reports on most of the offensive players, non-rookies, in your division pretty well. How long, when you're playing an uncommon opponent, especially like in a different conference, it's one thing like when you saw the Patriots for years, or Peyton and the Colts, or when he went to the Broncos, I'm sure, or some of the Chiefs players, but like when you see the Dallas Cowboys or the Seattle Seahawks, does it take you on a given week, especially coming off a game, for you to feel comfortable with like, this is how the guards play, this is how the centers play, this is what the running backs like, this is how the quarterbacks like? Do you feel like you have to do extra on the week with the uncommon opponents?
Depends. Sometimes I can get a good sense because if it's similar to a team we've played. Sometimes you'll play a good running attack that's like in the AFC North, and you can compare them to another. I'm very big on trying to group teams together and group players together. If I seen this team play one of our teams, because we play in the AFC North, I see them a lot more. So I know what they've done, and I know what Calais Campbell has done, or Larry Ogunjobi has done, and now we have him here. But, I try to make sure I can look at those guys throughout the season and understand what they did well, what they didn't do well. And I always the one game I hate is always the first game, because teams are completely different from year to year, but they're not completely different from game one to game two. There's so many different things that, whether it's a new OC, a new DC, new quarterback, new offensive lineman, rookies that play a big part. That's my only pet peeve, and my anxiety gets high because I'm like, there are so many different things going on. I got to make sure I cover all my bases and make sure that I've looked at every bit of film.
Did practice feel different this spring without Roethlisberger?
Practice didn't feel different. I just think, we've gotten so used to having Ben back there and kidding around, and Ben could, do some things that were different where we let him extend the play. But we're not letting these rookies extend plays because they're not Ben Roethlisberger and new guys. But it felt a little different, but not much.
How do you balance, as one of the lead dogs on the squad, of, obviously you have, you sign Trubisky, but then you also draft a quarterback high. I mean, that position it's hard, right? Because only one guy gets to play, unlike D linemen or wide receivers where everyone gets to rotate, and he's kind of got to be the leader. But, who totally knows? We'll see what plays out in training camp, of just kind of, you just embrace them both, or is it one of those things you just kind of let it play out? How do you attack that personally?
All of the above. I think you embrace them both, or embrace everybody. But I think you go in saying, this is Mitch Trubisky's spot to lose. He should be given the reins. He's had success. Everybody likes to talk about what Mitch did wrong, but he took the Chicago Bears to the playoffs. And I think he's got a better surrounding cast. I think we can help, him so he doesn't have to drive the whole field. And then from Kenny and Mason's point of view, they should be vying for that spot. This is the perfect opportunity for that. Competition breeds success. And I think everybody's got to be vying for the spot. If the guy behind me is not trying to vie for my spot, shame on him. But all three guys, Kenny, Mason, and Mitch, should be vying for the number one spot. They're my teammates, but man, we're going to compete to make sure we have the best group out there to start September.
One of my worst takes of all time was when Roethlisberger tears his arm baseball style, gets Tommy John. You guys make the trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick, first round pick. I'm like, this is insane. You guys are going to be drafted in the top 5. Minka's a good player, but what are you doing? Not only does Minkah get there, he was already good, but he was incredible once he got there.
Right.
You guys don't lose because you never lose, and you will go 500, and it's not that big a deal. When that trade happened, what was your thought? And then once you started playing with him, how fast did you realize, like, holy shit, this guy's good?
Oh, well, like I've talked to Kevin Colbert about this many times. When he did that trade for Minkah, it solidified that we weren't throwing away the season. And we were in that game in San Francisco the week Minkah came. Minkah didn't even know the entire playbook. But when Minkah got out there, I think he caused the fumble and then had an interception and was just making plays. And I went to Kev in the middle of that game. I was like, I appreciate you doing that. We needed that. But, I think when you have a guy like Minkah, man, he gives you an opportunity. And we have a lot of good players, and we knew Ben was hurt and out for the season, but man, we were not ready to throw away the season. And that it kind of gave us that confidence. Like, we don't care who's at quarterback, we still compete.
It's funny how a guy can go from being someone's brother, like your brother is going to be Cam's brother until he, has a 9 touchdown season. Then all of a sudden he becomes his own guy. Well, it's like J.J. Watt, one of the best players in the league. His brothers come into the league. And at first, T.J. Watt, again, is just J.J.'s brother. And then that quickly changes, like, no, he's just T.J. Watt now. But last year, one thing that used to happen, it probably happened a little bit when you first came in the league. It happened a lot, like when your dad was playing in the 80s, the 90s, and probably the early 2000s up to like Revis days, were the holdouts. Now this new thing is the hold in. And you're, people practice in high school, college, and the NFL doesn't change that much in terms of individual, group. So you're spending time with your defensive lineman, and TJ's just standing there. Obviously, it's the elephant in the room. He's not going anywhere. But what was that like? The hold in, just standing there looking at you guys when you're taking all the reps.
Well, I'll say this: as much as it was a hold in, TJ did a great job of being professional about it. He let everything take its course, but that didn't stop him from training. It may have looked like he was standing on the sideline, but the dude was doing pass rush drills by himself, running on the sideline, making sure he was in good shape, because he didn't want it to be detrimental to the team. And I commend him for that. These hold-ins are different. Per the CBA, it prevents guys from holding out because now you get fined and you can't get that money back. But a hold-in, it shows that you want to be there, you're taking part in meetings, but I have to be smart about my future and what's going on. And I think it's a good, responsible way to approach the situations now.
As someone that just kind of witnessed it firsthand with a guy that was well-deserving and ultimately got paid, guys like DK Metcalf and Deebo Samuel that are, hoping for a contract. DK didn't show up to the mandatory. Deebo did, but kind of did the same thing, hold in. Would you recommend that for players who have earned the right, but that's just kind of I think Minkah did something similar during the offseason for you guys until he got paid. Do you think that's the way you would recommend as a veteran? If you're talking to any young player?
Yeah, I think going forward now, you got to show face. I think even from the Steelers' perspective, they've always been like, at least show up so we can get eyes on you. I think that's just like they want to invest in you or invest in a product. You want to see the product. It's hard, but that's got to be the new thing now. It's different. It might feel uncomfortable at times, but I think with the Steelers, we had open communication about it. Everybody knew Minkah and TJ would be there, but you don't want to go out there and get hurt and risk everything. And that's from the player's perspective. You don't want to go out there and hurt yourself and then, flush away the money you would have just received. You're showing up to practice. You're taking care of your body still. It's just a matter of time of let's get this done. So that's a weight off your shoulders so you can just go out there and play.
Did TJ really barge into the Rooney's office and do the deal himself at the end, or is that a story that took on a life of its own?
I don't know. I don't know if he barged in. I know he probably had to clear it with us, Mr. Rooney's secretary or something, but I don't know. It might have taken on a different story, but man, it will be revered as one of those legends that happened where TJ was like, "Get the deal done, let's get it signed." But I think we were all happy for him to get done because TJ has earned it, Minkah has earned it. And we understand the players they are. And this was just validating that because we've seen what they've done week in and week out. They need to be paid like they're the top of their positions.
I think my favorite Steelers story over the last decade, it's funnier now than it probably was at the time, was you guys were playing a preseason game and there was a team playing and there were a couple running backs headed to the team playing, and there might live where I live, it's legal, going back and forth. I think the NFL doesn't even test for it anymore. And one of them didn't make the team plane. The other guy ends up on the team plane. It was LeGarrette and Le'Veon. You might have been a little marijuana going back and forth.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? And only one of them showed up. And was that just like everyone talking on the plane as you're going?
Well, we've always been told, if you don't make the team plane, you will get left. And I have anxiety about
we'll
it.
Leave without you.
Yeah. And so I've always made sure I'm like at least 30 minutes early because I don't want to be that guy. And we're getting closer to time and we're like, where are our players? LeGarrette shows up, not dressed in a white tee, and we're like, bro, get your stuff on. And then we were like, where's Le'Veon? And then it just took on a different meaning. We were like, you're not just late, you're dealing with something else. And I think Le'Veon caught a flight later that night, and we saw him at the team meeting, and we were like, ooh, damn, that's gonna be a hefty fine because Mike T doesn't play about missing. But we left it at that, and we just
let's talk about Tom. What's it like? Obviously, I think Tomlin's. I think it's safe to say, he's obviously well respected by fans, and he's just an incredible quote. Last year when the USC and he dropped the "never say never, but never" it's an all timer. But that I think as the Antonio and Le'Veon, some of those things, his like status has even grown. Like I think on the outside we respect him more. It's like this guy can handle anything.
Yeah.
What's it like? You've been around him now for over a decade. Obviously, you guys are. It's safe to say he's your coach, but you guys are pretty close personally.
Yeah.
What's it like being Mike Tomlin's friend and his player?
It's crazy. Like I always revered Coach T before I even got here. I was like, man, I'd love to play for him. And now that I do, it means that much more to me. I'd run through a brick wall for him. He's got a Super Bowl, but I want to be able to hand him that trophy as well. He has pushed me. He has made me a better player. And the thing I love about it is he always tells us, I'm going to treat you fairly, but not equally. And he's going to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, but other people need different things than other players. And so what player 53 on the roster might need something different than player 1 on the roster. And I think he's able to have those individual relationships with people to figure out what everybody needs. He knows how to push my buttons, and he's pushed my buttons a lot, and I've appreciated over the time. But it's only made me better, and I can't speak enough to the man he is. The single mindedness and tunnel vision he shows during the season allows us to just go out there and understand that football is our job and this is what we need to take care of. He provides ownership and accountability to the group, and with that that creates honesty and creates a lot of transparency that if it's not handled the right way, your team will crumble and will falter because things weren't focused on properly, and things slipped through the cracks.
Well, what's the thing? The standard is the standard, right? And you guys just, there's an element of luck. You've never lost. I mean, obviously, when you go to Ohio State, you're not going to lose much. But coming to the NFL, you have a lot of Ohio State teammates and guys that have played Ohio State over the last 20 years to go to crappy teams, and it's not their fault. But it's, you guys just don't lose at Pittsburgh ever. And when it's the worst. And I always judge people on their lowest moments. That's why I give Belichick a lot of credit. A couple years ago, when the 20 season and Tom left, everyone acted like they were one. They did go 7-9. Now that's under 500, but a lot of teams, if their worst year is 7-9, it's not the biggest deal. You guys' worst years are 8-8 or better.
Yeah.
And last year is another good example of you just found a way and you end up in the playoffs. So obviously Mike's the voice of the team, but how much now do you guys, like, he relies on you because the coach can't say everything, right? So you have to be the voice for kind of him or the defensive coordinator. Do you feel that weight as a leader, or is it something now that's just part of the gig?
I think Mike T gives us the landscape and the environment to do it. And then I think it goes to the players. We have to be competitive as hell. We have to hold each other accountable. We have to push each other. I really do enjoy practicing and enjoy training with guys, because then you gain a level of trust. You understand what players can do, what they can't, but the communication gets better. And I've always been a big proponent on your leaders got to lead, and I got to make sure I do my job. TJ, Najee, Minkah, these guys are, the stalwarts that got to lead the front and got to lead the group. So we appreciate that, but we always want to, make sure that we're pushing each other and making sure we're getting after each other.
Obviously, in college, you guys despise your rival. I mean, it's one of the best rivalries in America, and probably in the world, Ohio State versus Michigan.
Yes.
In the pros, I think sometimes, it feels just because guys move teams, it's not quite the same. But you guys have had a rival for, a couple decades, even before you got there. Because you've been on the team the whole time, does it feel as genuine as the rivalry that you had in college with Michigan? And would you describe your feelings toward the Ravens as hatred? What?
Oh man, with the Ravens, it's weird. It's a level of respect, because
is that different than Michigan? Like, do you respect Michigan?
No, I don't respect anybody from Michigan. And I just think
it's different, right?
It's very different. Like Ohio State and Michigan, there is a hatred there. Like, and you can go back to the Bo Schembechler days, the Woody Hayes days. That's that team up north. And when you lose to them, God forbid, I never lost to them, so I don't know that feeling.
Nope.
But you have to. You're representing your school, and those are bragging rights. When you get to the league, it's not just about like representing like your team and bragging rights. Man, these dudes are professionals, and there's been a level of success from both teams, and it is. I just remember those night games, Steelers Ravens, where you had Troy Polamalu and Ray Lewis on both sides. Like that is iconic. You had Jerome Bettis going up against Ray Lewis. You had Troy Polamalu sacking Joe Flacco, or him picking up what was it, interception, and then returning it and watching the whole stand shake. Like, that was exciting to me. And I think that's what made the rivalry. Hines Ward making sure he had some of those clear kill blocks, I call them.
Oh,
those games changed football. Like Ryan Clark laying out Willis McGahee. They literally put in the rules in the NFL because these guys were killing each other. And you watch it and you're like, okay, you understand the rivalry because this game escalated quickly and both teams were on the cusp of, trying to win Super Bowls. And that's what we always have to live up to. There's no reason to try to get up for Baltimore because you're already up. And I've appreciated that time. And I always look forward to playing Baltimore Ravens because it's a physical game, and you better bring your big boy pants because you'll get exposed if you don't.
With some of those Marvin Lewis teams, you guys in Cincinnati had a couple-year run where it was teetering on like, this shit's crazy. What is going on?
Yeah, like, you know, if you listen to the TV copy of the playoff game, you can hear a level of disgust in the announcers, and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is like the way they talk about it, you're like, you would think we were in a full out war.
Yeah, would look like it.
Yeah, and you know, Juju's block on Vontez Burfict, and like before that game, Vontez was getting into it with one of our O linemen, DeCastro, and if you get DeCastro talking, you know something's wrong because DeCastro is like a psychopath. He doesn't talk, and he's just focused on football. Yeah. But this game, you hear DeCastro start chirping. So then I remember that game, DeCastro was pulling, and Vontez was coming around, and DeCastro just laid him out. And you're just thinking like, this type of game is like it's a petty personal game. There's not a respect there. There wasn't a respect there. In the personal fouls that came from that. And I think it all started from when Vontez hit Le'Veon out of bounds because he ended Le'Veon's year, and we were like, okay, like you took it a step farther where it was outside the game. It wasn't just, you know, going at each other in the confines of the game. You went out of your way to hurt a player who we beloved and, you know, stood up for. So now you're poking the bear. So now you're going to get it all. And, you know, Pac-Man was there, you know, chirping with Joey, and then with the refs. That game had to be one of the insane games for us to win and be a part of. Like, we went out on a series that we were supposed to, if they ran out the clock, they were going to win the game. Ryan Shazier ends up stripping the ball, and then we recover it, and you see Ben Roethlisberger come out of the tunnel because he was hurt and takes us down the field. I think they knocked AB out. Oh, that was another hit. They knocked AB out of the game. And then Chris Boswell kicks it between the uprights. We win that game, and we're not shocked, but everybody around is shocked that we came out of this game as a winner. But it was crazy there for a second.
It was crazy. You've been on some teams. I thought the year that Shazier got injured, you guys were the best team in the league. Yeah. The year you're talking about, did you guys play the Chiefs the next week and beat them at Arrowhead? Was that the same year? Was that a different year?
Well,
that team was sweet.
That was a different year.
16. That might have been 15 you're talking about. Or 17.
I'm talking about 17, because 17, we went to Denver, and then we fumbled the ball on one of the last possessions, and then Peyton came down and scored. But I was talking about, what was it? You were talking about 16. 16 was when we went to the conference championship versus New England.
Yeah, and Le'Veon got hurt, I think, on like the first series of the game against the Patriots, and obviously he was, you know, kind of the straw that stirred the drink on that squad besides the defense. And so you've played on teams that, you know, same in college. I mean, you've been right there to be a champion, to be a Super Bowl champion. Is that something that just kind of, you know, you're a pretty high level motivated guy anyway, but is that kind of an easy thing to just think about, like, I haven't got over the mountaintop yet?
It honestly is, because I've been so close, and it's one or two plays that change it sometimes, but I feel like there's going to come a time where I get over this damn hump. Like, you know, and I'll even take it back to high school. We went to the state championship, and, you know, there was the year before we went to the state championship, they had made a rule that you could tie in the state championship because the year before a kicker had missed and, you know, had went through a lot of harassment. And then in college, in high school, we went to the state championship and tied. And that was one of the worst feelings because, like, how do I celebrate a tie in the state championship? We still got rings, but, like, man, that, like, did not sit well with me. And then college, freshman year, starting national championship, and we tricked it off and did not win. And then all throughout there, I wish we had college playoffs back then because that would have been fun to be a part of. We ended up going to the Sugar Bowl my senior year. We won versus Arkansas, but never got to play a national championship again. And now I've been in the playoffs, and all I want is a Super Bowl. All I want is a championship. That is the crowning moment I'm looking forward to.
You said the word, so I remember last year sitting on my couch. You were playing the Lions, right? In a torrential downpour, and the game finishes a tie. Correct?
Yes.
What's it feel like? I know we hear the coaches talk. Neither one's happy. What's it like as a player when overtime hits 0-0 and both teams have the same score and you finish with a tie?
I'm gonna be honest. I was hot. Like, I was pissed off. Like, and that's not a shot at like what the Lions did, because Lions did some things well in that game. But damn, I don't ever want to end in a tie. I don't feel comfortable with it. I don't feel comfortable with losses. I look at it as a loss, but somehow that got us into the playoffs. So, I couldn't be that upset about it.
Well, I know you've been in the mix for the Man of the Year. You've been the representative for the Steelers. I was reading about your foundation. I mean, I didn't know this, but you can on Cam Heyward Foundation.org that you had severe asthma as a child.
Yeah.
And, I had bouts with asthma, but nothing like you were hospitalized. And is that something, how'd you get over it? And is that something you still deal with to this day?
Oh, I still deal with it. I have to take my inhaler before every game. When my chest does get very tight, I have to get on a nebulizer or a machine that helps with my breathing. But growing up, I was a complete mess. Thank God for my parents, because I put them through some hard times. Growing up, my mom was always scared about me playing sports and, overexerting myself, because there was an opportunity that I could suffer from it. But through sports, I was able to strengthen my lungs and, continue to keep growing in it. I'm from Pittsburgh, but now I'm back in Pittsburgh. I remember those times going to the hospital on Christmas nights because I had an allergic reaction from a real Christmas tree, and my asthma flared up, and now I couldn't even breathe. And I couldn't imagine putting or watching my kids go through that. That would be heartbreaking. But luckily I'm here today, and, my foundation helps with asthma and helps with children in need. So, I want to make sure I do my part.
I lost my dad about 4 years ago from cancer, but I was, basically your age now. I know your dad, Ironhead Hayward, who was a famous football player. You lost him. Was it your senior year in high school?
Yeah, before my senior year in high school.
It's something, I've followed your career from afar. I say this all the time about the NFL. The majority of guys are such high level, and it's why when guys get in trouble, it's such a minority of the overall group, especially relative to society. But definitely, you, I would say, are even on the higher end of that, and being in the mix to win. I feels like inevitability to win the award one day. Is that a moment? Because they say, I remember Scott Van Pelt says you never become kind of a grown up till you lose your father, and it's something it's a jolting feeling. But it's one thing to be an adult. It's another. I can't imagine. Was that something that matured you to? Have you always just? Would you consider yourself a mature guy? Was that just a moment that it's a life changing moment, obviously, but
it's a life changing moment, and James, our producer, can attest. I am not mature whatsoever. I am a big kid at heart. I love to have fun, and I like to think I matured later on in life. Obviously, I had to be there for my brothers and my mom, but they were there for me. And I had to grow up. My mom was such a big standout in my life, especially when my dad died. She was like she handled all my recruiting. So like when we went to Ohio State, I wish my dad was there to help, guide me through this process. But she was in the forefront, asking teams, what do you play, a 3-4, 4-3? What do you see him more as, a D tackle, D end? What weight do you want him at? All these different questions. And I'm like, I'm so glad she's asking these questions and not me, because I wouldn't have had a clue what to ask. As a 17-year-old, you're like thinking like, oh, this is Ohio State. Yeah, this is great. But my mom was preparing me for, the next level and making sure I was going to be in a great spot.
Do you think there's any way in 2022 that you don't end up at Georgia? How do they let you get out of the state the way they're going now? Kirby might have just jumped on your back and refused to let you go.
Yeah, I don't think Georgia was happy I was leaving in the first place, because who was there? Mark Richt was there, and they've had some great.
They were good.
They were, but man, my second choice would have been Florida, and that would have really upset all the Georgia people. Urban was there, and I was very close to going to Florida, but I went to the Ohio State game. It was an unofficial game for me, and I was a little bit sick, and my mama and me were like, we can't make it official because it was too late. So we drove up ourselves, and it was the 1-2 game, Ohio State versus Michigan, and the winner was going to the national championship.
Was that with Troy Smith? Was he the quarterback?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like we got out there, and you start seeing like ESPN is like ABC is like showing this game. So you're seeing the cameras fly across. You're seeing like the Ohio State band come out at halftime, and you're like, okay, this is a different type of game. This is like everybody's watching. I want to be a part of this. And from then on, it was like everything was head off. Like Coach Tressel's awesome. He cares about you as a person. They care about your academics. The players there, like James Laurinaitis was like one of my hosts, and getting to interact with him, I was like, this dude is awesome. This guy's won the Buckus, and now I get to talk to him. He's just like a regular guy. That was one of my favorite trips, and I was like, I got to come here. This is Ohio State. Like, I want to be a Buckeye.
Speaking, you obviously got a podcast starting, not the Not Just Football podcast with Cam Heyward, which yes. I was just thinking about to ask this question. You're doing a podcast for Omaha, Peyton and Eli, two guys you tried to kill for years before they both retired.
Yes.
So, tell me about your podcast and just how it all came to be, working with Peyton and Eli.
Yeah. So the podcast is called Not Just Football with Cam Heyward. We were flipping around through names for forever. And, for me, I didn't want to just be tied down to just football. I wanted to be able to talk other sports because I love basketball. I love all different types of sports. I love pop culture too. So, it's funny how this all worked out. Peyton and his people reaching out, the people at Omaha. Peyton actually played with my dad, and I can't wait to have him on my show one of these times because I want to ask him so many different stories. Because I remember we were in Indianapolis, and I think Peyton was struggling, but like my mom and dad were telling me like he's going to be the truth one day, and they were right. But now this dude's my boss, and so this is a little weird. A guy that I got the chance to play against is now my boss, and they create great shows and great content. But this is an unfiltered, perspective of what a day in life of what I go through, how I prepare, what I'm looking at, how I see, sports, and how I see pop culture. So I'm ready. I got one of my friends to come on. He's going to be my co-host. He's going to be busting my balls a little bit too. So it's going to be a good time.
Obviously Draymond, his podcast shot like a rocket ship, but basketball's a little different scheme. It's Steph Curry shooting the ball, and he's talking a lot of shit.
Yes.
In football, it's like with the culture, talking about other guys you're playing, it's a little frowned upon by coaching staff. Is the balance that probably wouldn't be, it's not necessarily your style, but I don't think anyone could pull that off in the NFL, right?
You're right. Like, I've seen like basketball players go on like talk shows and literally like talk crap about a player. Like, I'm not with all that. Like, that's not what I'm going to do. Like, I'm here to, broaden my horizons and learn and have fun with people and, grow great awareness to our game that we love, and provide a lot of insight because a lot of times you get these players after they're done. Like, I can recall when Jerome used to do his show after he was done with football. And, I just think this is a really cool platform to, talk to a current player. And, I might have to have a couple of those where, we win or we lose. I'm going straight to the pod. Make sure you stay tuned. But I'm not using this time to call out nobody. If anything, I'm using this time to call out myself and hold myself accountable.
The difference in football than the NBA is like physically you could get, crackback block. I mean, you could get hits, in the NBA, you don't touch anybody.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll get you out of here on this. I remember when I was scouting, a famous story was, the Steelers have always been held to the highest regard from a scouting perspective. And Jack Lambert, they were like a practice at Kent State when he was in college. And one of the Steelers scouts was there, and it was like an outside walkthrough, in the 60s or whatever, on gravel. And Jack was going 100 miles an hour, tackling people, bloodied on the gravel. And the Steelers scout went back to the Roonies and were like, he's our guy. And they get him. And that's just, these legends of Steelers scout. And it's just, but it's lived that, right? To when I was a kid, to Greg Lloyd's, to Harrison and Lamar Woodley's, to now you and TJ and Minkah. I mean, you do get to play for a team that, one, the fan base is massive. Two, football means everything. And three, you're just thought of like, if you start on defense for the Steelers, you are a badass. It's got to be pretty cool.
Well, I remember hearing about how the scout Bill Nunn would hold on to certain tapes because back then they were supposed to share the film with everybody, but they didn't. And so Bill Nunn, he held onto the tape and nobody knew about certain players. So, the scouting department has always been ahead of everybody else and has always found great players. But when you put on that black and gold, man, you are really embracing a tough defense demeanor. It's something I'm proud of, something I got to live up to every day. And I just enjoy it. I thank God every day that I'm able to be a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Well, I'm looking forward to watching you guys play on defense because every year you guys just cracking people left and right, and watching Najee play, and the quarterback situation is going to be fun.
It is.
So you guys make the playoffs basically every year. So I expect you back there. I look forward to. Let's. Good luck to you, man. Stay healthy. And good luck with the pot. New media, baby. New media. There's no skipping weeks, Cam.
No skipping weeks.
You got to keep no skipping weeks.
James won't let us. We got it.
No. Take it easy, bro. Thanks a lot.
Appreciate you, John. Thank you for having me.
No problem. Thanks for watching 3 and Out. You can check out the podcast below in the description. And make sure you subscribe right now to the Volumes YouTube channel.